The orchestrator's secret, Olivia Barnes, moved with practiced efficiency through the Grand Meridian Ballroom, her tablet clutched against her midnight blue gown as she directed staff with quiet authority. At 32, she had orchestrated dozens of high-profile events, but tonight's Celestial Cancer Research Gala represented the pinnacle of her career, and something far more personal. The ice sculpture needs to be centered exactly between the donor wall and the orchestra. Platform, she instructed a pair of waitstaff. And please remind the bartenders about the signature cocktail timing. It's revealed only after the second round of donations. Her assistant, Priya, appeared at her elbow. The floral arrangements for Table 7 were just delivered. And there's a situation in the VIP entrance. Olivia suppressed a sigh. What kind of situation? The kind where our surprise guest donor has arrived an hour early and doesn't want to follow the arrival schedule. The blood drained from Olivia's face. Their surprise donor, the one whose identity had been closely guarded even from her, was already here. The one the foundation director had promised would double their fundraising goals for the evening. "I'll handle it," she said, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from her dress. The VIP entrance was a separate hallway lined with photographs of cancer survivors. Olivia had designed it herself, wanting donors to see the faces of those they were helping before they entered the opulence of the ballroom. She rounded the corner and stopped dead. Julian Wright stood examining one of the photographs, his back to her. Even after 10 years, she recognized his posture immediately, tall, confident, with that slight tilt of the head that suggested he was absorbing every detail. His dark hair was shorter now, with distinguished touches of silver at the temples. The tailored tuxedo couldn't hide the athletic build she once knew so intimately. Her heart stuttered painfully. Of all the billionaires in New York, why did it have to be him? "Mr. Wright," she said, her professional voice betraying nothing of the earthquake happening inside her. "Welcome to the Celestial Gala. I'm Olivia Barnes, the event coordinator." He turned, and those penetrating hazel eyes widened in recognition. For a moment, Julian looked genuinely stunned, a rare expression for the man whose technology company, Horizon Innovations, had revolutionized renewable energy storage and made him one of the wealthiest men under 40. "Liv," he breathed, using the nickname only he had ever called her. "I had no idea you were—" He stopped, composing himself with visible effort. "Miss Barnes, it's been a long time." 10 years, 3 months, she replied automatically, then flushed. "The foundation didn't inform me you were tonight's special donor. Would you have agreed to run the event if they had?" The directness was so typically Julian. She'd loved that about him once, before it had turned into the ambition that ultimately separated them. "Of course. This cause is too important for personal history to interfere." Something flickered in his eyes. "Personal history? Is that what we're calling it now?" Before she could respond, her phone vibrated. A text from the hospital. "Your mother is on her way." Nurse Delia accompanying as arranged. Olivia swallowed hard. No one at the gala knew that Francesca Barnes, diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer just weeks ago, had requested to see her daughter's professional triumph as one of her final wishes. It was a secret Olivia had kept carefully. Her mother would be seated discreetly at a back table, able to observe without taxing her diminishing strength. "I need to check the main entrance," she said, stepping back from Julian. "The doors open in 40 minutes. Your table is positioned center right of the stage, and the foundation director will escort you in at 8:30 sharp." "Always the perfect planner," Julian said softly. Some things never change, but they had changed. Everything had. And as Olivia hurried away from the man she'd once planned to marry, she forced down the feelings threatening to overwhelm her professional composure. Tonight wasn't about their past. It was about raising millions for cancer research, about creating a perfect event, and about letting her mother witness her success one last time. What Olivia couldn't know was how completely this night would transform everything she thought she understood about second chances. Echoes of yesterday. The Grand Meridian Ballroom glittered like a constellation brought to earth. Olivia circulated among the tables with practiced ease. her professional smile never wavering despite the weight of Julian Wright's gaze following her throughout the evening. At precisely 8:30, he had made his entrance, causing a ripple of excitement as Foundation Director Thomas Blackwood introduced him as the evening's mystery benefactor, Mr. Wright's contribution tonight will be matched dollar for dollar up to $10 million, Thomas announced to audible gasps. His commitment to advancing cancer treatment technology is unparalleled. From her position near the service entrance, Olivia watched as Julian charmed the table of pharmaceutical executives and hospital board members. He was magnetic, somehow even more so than the brilliant 24-year-old she had fallen for at Stanford. Back then, he had been a scholarship student with revolutionary ideas about energy storage. Now he commanded rooms with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person present. "He keeps looking at you," Priya whispered, appearing at Olivia's side with a fresh tablet displaying the evening's timeline. And not in a casual way. More like, "You're a puzzle he's trying to solve. Focus on the auction preparations," Olivia redirected. "And check if my mother has arrived. Table 27, corner position." As Priya slipped away, Olivia allowed herself a brief moment of remembrance. Their last night together had been rain-soaked and devastating, Julian accepting the Silicon Valley opportunity that would launch his career. Olivia committed to her fellowship at the Metropolitan Museum that would cement hers in New York, both too stubborn to compromise, too young to understand what they were losing. "You'll resent me if I ask you to give up your dream," he had said, rain plastering his hair to his forehead outside her apartment. "And you'll resent me if I ask you to give up yours?" she had responded, tears mixing with raindrops. They had promised to try long distance. 3 months later, after missed calls and growing silences, Olivia had seen the photos of Julian with venture capitalist Sophia Reeves at a tech gala. She never called him again. He never explained. The orchestra transitioned to a waltz, pulling Olivia back to the present. Across the room, her mother had arrived, looking regal despite her frailty. Francesca's silver hair was elegantly styled, her emerald gown disguising how much weight she had lost. Nurse Delia sat beside her, disguised as a friend rather than a caregiver. Francesca's eyes shone with pride as she watched Olivia work, completely unaware of the complicated history unfolding in the room. She doesn't know about Julian, Olivia thought. How could she? I never told anyone how badly it ended. As Olivia approached the stage to check the microphone for the upcoming speeches, Julian intercepted her. We need to talk, leave, he said quietly, the familiar nickname sending an unwelcome shiver through her. This isn't the time or place, she replied, maintaining her professional demeanor. I have a gala to run. Then when? Another 10 years? Something raw flickered in his expression. I looked for you, you know. After everything with Sophia fell apart, Olivia stiffened. I wasn't hiding. You just weren't looking in the right places. Before he could respond, Thomas Blackwood appeared, clapping Julian on the shoulder. There you are. Senator Wilcox is dying to discuss your sustainable grid project. Julian reluctantly allowed himself to be led away, but not before murmuring, This conversation isn't over. Across the room, Francesca Barnes watched the exchange with interest. Though cancer had weakened her body, it had done nothing to diminish her perception. She didn't know the handsome billionaire's name, but she recognized the way he looked at her daughter, and more tellingly, the way Olivia's carefully constructed composure faltered in his presence. Delia, she whispered to her nurse. Who is that man speaking with Olivia? That's Julian Wright, the tech billionaire, Delia replied. He's donating millions tonight. Francesca's eyes widened slightly. Julian, she repeated, remembering the name Olivia had whispered in her sleep years ago during a brief visit home when her daughter's heart had been shattered. So that's him. As the evening progressed toward the critical fundraising portion, Olivia found herself increasingly distracted by both Julian's presence and her mother's. Two worlds colliding, her past and the precious, dwindling future. When Priya informed her that Julian had requested to speak during the donation announcements, Olivia felt a flutter of professional anxiety. He's not on the program, she protested. Thomas approved it, Priya said with a shrug. Apparently, when someone offers $10 million, they get speaking privileges. As Olivia took her position stage left, clipboard in hand, she caught her mother's eye across the room. Francesca gave her a small, knowing smile and a subtle nod toward Julian. Somehow, impossibly, her mother had figured it out. The evening that Olivia had planned to the minute was now veering into uncharted territory. And as Julian approached the stage with determination in his stride, she had the distinct feeling that her carefully constructed walls were about to come tumbling down. Hearts unveiled. The crystal chandeliers dimmed as Thomas Blackwood took the stage, his voice resonating through the perfect acoustics Olivia had insisted upon when selecting the venue. "Ladies and gentlemen, your generosity tonight has already broken records," he announced, genuine emotion coloring his words. "But before we open our formal pledge drive, I'd like to introduce someone whose vision for the future of cancer treatment technology has the potential to change countless lives." Olivia glanced anxiously toward her mother. Francesca sat with perfect posture despite the pain medication Olivia knew was barely keeping her comfortable. Her mother had always been her rock, the high school literature teacher who raised her single-handedly after Olivia's father abandoned them, who worked summer jobs to afford Olivia's college applications, who never once complained about her own sacrifices. "Julian Wright," Thomas continued, "built Horizon Innovations from a dormitory idea into a clean energy empire. But what many don't know is that his latest subsidiary, Horizon Medical Technologies, has been quietly developing breakthrough treatments for aggressive cancers." This was news to Olivia. She watched Julian approach the microphone, his expression unreadable. The audience applauded enthusiastically, but Julian seemed to notice only one person in the room. "Thank you," he began, his voice steady yet somehow intimate. "My connection to cancer research isn't something I've shared publicly before. 10 years ago, I lost someone very dear to me, my mentor, Professor Samuel Bennett." Olivia's breath caught. Sam Bennett had been Julian's academic advisor, the man who recognized Julian's potential when no one else had. He'd been kind to Olivia, too, inviting them both to holiday dinners when neither could afford to travel home. "Sam died 6 months after his diagnosis," Julian continued. "In our last conversation, he made me promise 2 things. To never let fear of failure stop me from pursuing what matters, and to not waste time on regrets." His eyes found Olivia's. "I've succeeded at the first promise but failed miserably at the second." The audience was captivated, unaware of the private conversation happening beneath the public one. Olivia felt rooted to the spot, her clipboard clutched so tightly her knuckles whitened. "Tonight, I'm announcing that Horizon Medical is committing $50 million over 5 years to the Celestial Foundation's research initiatives." Gasps and applause filled the room. "But more importantly, we're opening our patents and research data to the Foundation's scientists, effective immediately." Thomas Blackwood looked stunned at this unexpected announcement. In the corporate world, such intellectual property was worth billions. "Some of you may wonder why," Julian continued after the applause subsided. "The answer is simple. Time is precious. I learned that lesson too late once before. I won't make the same mistake again." From her table, Francesca Barnes watched with keen interest. Despite her weakening condition, she recognized the current of emotion flowing between her daughter and the man on stage. In her decades of teaching literature, she had analyzed countless love stories. She knew one when she saw it unfolding before her. As Julian finished his speech to thunderous applause, the planned program resumed. Donors began making their pledges, inspired by Julian's generosity. Olivia moved through her duties mechanically, her mind replaying Julian's words. When it came time for her to deliver the closing remarks of the evening, she took the stage with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "On behalf of the Celestial Foundation," she began, her professional voice steady despite her inner turmoil, "I want to express our profound gratitude to everyone who contributed tonight." As she delivered her carefully prepared speech, Olivia found herself going off script, something she never did. "Cancer doesn't just take lives," she said, her voice softening. "It steals time. As someone watching my own mother battle this disease..." She stopped, the unplanned revelation catching in her throat. The room fell silent. This was not information she had shared with the foundation, with her staff, with anyone. But somehow, saying it aloud in this room filled with people dedicated to fighting the disease felt right. My mother taught me that life rarely gives us perfect timing, Olivia continued, finding Francesca's eyes in the crowd. But she also taught me that it's never too late to be brave. From his seat at the front table, Julian stared at Olivia with newfound understanding. Her dedication to this particular cause suddenly made perfect sense. The woman he'd known a decade ago would never have revealed something so personal in a professional setting. She had changed. They both had. As Olivia concluded her remarks, the ballroom erupted in applause. The event was an unqualified success, but as she stepped away from the microphone, she saw Julian rise from his seat with purpose in his movements. Thomas tried to intercept him, but Julian politely brushed past. Olivia felt time slow as Julian approached the stage, climbed the steps, and walked directly toward her. The room, still applauding, began to murmur with curiosity. Priya appeared at Olivia's elbow. "What's happening?" she whispered urgently. "I have no idea," Olivia replied honestly, her heart hammering against her ribs as Julian Wright, the man she had spent a decade trying to forget, moved inexorably toward her center stage, where everyone could see whatever was about to happen next. The proposal. The applause faded to confused murmurs as Julian Wright approached Olivia before the entire ballroom. The soft amber lighting caught the determination in his eyes, a look Olivia recognized. From their college days when Julian would work through nights to solve seemingly impossible engineering. "Problems. Julian," she whispered. "What are you doing?" Instead of answering, he gestured to the technician for the microphone. Olivia felt hundreds of eyes upon them, including her mother's. The professional, in her, wanted to shut this down. This unplanned disruption to her. Meticulously organized evening, but something deeper kept her rooted in place. "I wasn't planning to do this tonight," Julian began, his voice carrying throughout the hushed ballroom. "Or maybe I was, and just wouldn't admit it to myself." He gave a self-deprecating smile that reminded Olivia painfully of the young man she'd fallen in love with, before success and ambition had reshaped him. "Olivia Barnes and I met at Stanford 13 years ago," he continued. "She was studying art history and business. I was an engineering student with more ideas than money. We were completely wrong for each other on paper." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Olivia caught sight of Priya's shocked expression at the edge of the stage. Near the back, Francesca leaned forward in her chair, transfixed. "But for 3 years, we were everything to each other," Julian said, his voice softening, "until we let careers and 3,000 miles come between us." Olivia felt heat rising to her face. "Julian," she whispered urgently, "this is a fundraiser, not a confessional." He turned to face her fully, lowering the microphone. 10 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life letting you go," he said, his words meant only for her, despite the room straining to hear. "I told myself it was timing, circumstance, ambition, but it was fear. I was afraid I couldn't be what you deserved." "You never gave me the chance to decide that for myself," she replied, emotions she'd buried for a decade surfacing despite her best efforts. Julian raised the microphone again. "When I walked in tonight and saw Olivia, I thought fate was giving me a sign. Then I heard her speak about her mother, about time being precious," his voice caught. "And I realized some things can't wait for perfect timing." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Julian set the microphone down on the podium and took both of Olivia's hands in his, unmindful of the hundreds of witnesses. "The night we broke up, you told me that if I ever figured out what really mattered, I should let you know." His voice dropped so only she could hear. "It took me far too long, but I figured it out. It's you, Liv. It's always been you." Then, in a move that sent an audible gasp through the Grand Meridian ballroom, Julian Wright, tech billionaire, renowned innovator, one of the world's most eligible bachelors, lowered himself to one knee before Olivia. "Julian," she breathed, her professional composure finally cracking completely. "Marry me now," he said, the words simple but profound. "Not tomorrow, not when timing is perfect. Now when we both understand how precious time really is." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Olivia stood frozen, her mind racing through a decade of emotions. The devastation of their breakup, the years of throwing herself into her career, the nights she'd searched for news of him online, the pride she'd felt at his success mixed with the ache of his absence. Through tear-blurred vision, she found her mother in the crowd. Francesca Barnes, the strongest woman Olivia had ever known, was openly weeping, her hands pressed to her heart. But she was nodding, a smile breaking through her tears. It was the smile that did it, her mother's blessing, her recognition that some chances might never come again. Francesca, facing her own mortality, understood better than anyone the value of seizing happiness while it was possible. Olivia turned back to Julian, tears streaming freely down her face now, utterly indifferent to her mascara or the hundreds of phones undoubtedly recording this moment. "I waited 10 years for you to say that," she said, her voice trembling but clear enough to carry through the silent room. Julian's face transformed with hope. "Is that a yes?" Instead of answering, Olivia did something entirely out of character for the polished, controlled event planner everyone knew. She threw herself into Julian's arms as he rose to meet her, burying her face against his chest as a decade of walls came tumbling down. The ballroom erupted in astonished applause and cheers. Thomas Blackwood looked simultaneously bewildered and delighted at the publicity this would generate for the foundation. Priya stood slack-jawed at the edge of the stage, but Olivia noticed none of it. All she could focus on was Julian's heartbeat against her ear and the sudden, overwhelming certainty that sometimes the most perfectly planned life needed an unexpected disruption. "Yes," she whispered against his jacket, "but I have someone you need to meet first." Julian pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, understanding immediately. "Your mother?" Olivia nodded. "Time is precious, remember?" Hand in hand, oblivious to the continuing applause, they left the stage and made their way through the stunned crowd toward table 27, where Francesca Barnes waited with tears of joy streaming down her face, a woman who understood, better than most, that sometimes love arrives exactly when you need it most, even if the timing seems impossible. New Beginnings dawn broke over Central Park as Olivia sat beside her mother's hospital bed, Julian asleep in the uncomfortable chair opposite her. 3 weeks had passed since the gala, 3 weeks of whirlwind emotions, medical consultations, and rediscovered connections. "He's still here," Francesca observed quietly, her voice weaker but her eyes as perceptive as ever. The private room at Memorial Sloan Kettering was filled with flowers, many from gala attendees who had witnessed the dramatic proposal that had made headlines across New York's social pages. "He hasn't left," Olivia confirmed, glancing at Julian's sleeping form. "Not even when Dr. Harrison started the new treatment protocol at 3 a.m. After the gala, Julian had immediately connected Francesca with Horizon Medical's top oncologists. Though her prognosis remained terminal, a new experimental immunotherapy had shown promise in slowing progression, potentially giving them months instead of weeks. "I never told you why I truly ended things with your father," Francesca said suddenly, her fingers lightly tracing the IV line in her arm. "Everyone assumed he simply abandoned us, and I let them believe that." Olivia leaned closer. Her mother rarely spoke of Richard Barnes, the charismatic architect who had walked out when Olivia was 7. "The night before he left, he told me he'd been offered his dream project in Singapore." Francesca's eyes grew distant. "He wanted us to go with him, but I refused to uproot you, to leave my teaching position, my mother, everything we had built." "You were protecting me," Olivia said. "The familiar narrative." "No," Francesca replied with unexpected firmness. "I was protecting myself from change, from risk. I told myself it was for you, but it was fear. And by the time I realized my mistake, he had built a new life without us." Olivia sat back, stunned by this revelation. "Why tell me this now?" Francesca reached for her daughter's hand. "Because I've watched you build walls the same way I did, perfection as protection. When I saw you with Julian at the gala, I recognized something I've regretted for 25 years. The look of someone willing to risk everything for love, facing someone too afraid to take the leap." Across the room, Julian stirred, running a hand through his disheveled hair. He immediately checked Francesca's monitors before meeting Olivia's eyes with a sleepy smile that still made her heart race. "Morning," he said softly. "Should I get coffee?" "Please." Both women answered in unison, then laughed. After Julian stepped out, Francesca continued, as if there had been no interruption. "Promise me something, Olivia. Don't wait for perfect timing for the important things. There will always be reasons to delay joy." "I promise," Olivia whispered, squeezing her mother's frail hand. The following weeks passed in a blur. Julian temporarily relocated Horizon's East Coast operations to New York to be near Olivia and Francesca. Together, they created a modified schedule that allowed Olivia to continue her event planning business while spending afternoons with her mother. On Francesca's good days, they planned a small wedding ceremony in the hospital's garden courtyard. "You don't have to rush this for me," Francesca had protested weakly. "We're not," Julian had replied with conviction. "We're done wasting time." 6 weeks after the gala, on an unseasonably warm December afternoon, Olivia Barnes became Olivia Wright in a ceremony attended by 20 guests, including Thomas Blackwood, Priya, and the nurses who had become like family. Francesca, thinner but radiant in a pale blue dress, watched from her wheelchair as her daughter, wearing a simple ivory sheath, exchanged vows with the man she had never stopped loving. "The journey that brings us here today wasn't direct," Julian said in his vows, his voice steady but his eyes glistening. "But every detour taught me that time apart only made my heart more certain. You are the destination I've been seeking all along, Liv." "You once told me that engineering was about solving problems," Olivia replied, tears streaming freely. "It took us 10 years, but we finally solved our most complex equation: how two people with separate dreams build a shared one." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, Francesca Barnes dabbed at her eyes, her heart full despite the pain that medicine could no longer fully mask. She had witnessed her greatest wish, her daughter embracing love without fear. The experimental treatment gave Francesca Barnes 4 more months. 4 months of Sunday brunches with her new son-in-law, who insisted on reading aloud the poetry she had taught for decades. 4 months of watching Olivia balance her thriving business with newfound personal happiness. 4 months of planning for a future she wouldn't see but had helped make possible. When spring arrived in New York, Francesca passed peacefully with Olivia and Julian at her bedside, her hand in theirs. Her last words were a quote from her beloved Tennyson: "'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all." 1 year after the Celestial Gala, Olivia stood at the podium in the same Grand Meridian ballroom, now as both event planner and featured speaker. The Francesca Barnes Memorial Scholarship for Literature had been established alongside a New Horizon medical research division dedicated to pancreatic cancer treatments. My mother taught literature because she believed stories connect us to our deepest truths, Olivia told the assembled crowd, Julian watching proudly from the front row. Her favorite lesson was that life rarely unfolds as we plan, but sometimes the unexpected detours lead us exactly where we need to be. As she placed a protective hand over her slightly rounded belly, their first child, a secret they were waiting just 1 more week to announce, Olivia thought about timing, fate, and second chances. Some love stories take unexpected paths. Some require years of separation before reunion. But the stories worth telling, her mother had always said, are the ones where love persists despite time and circumstance, where it waits, patient and unwavering, for hearts to find their way back to each other. In the end, that was exactly the story Olivia and Julian were writing 1 day at a time.